Have you ever wondered how a long-standing conflict in the Middle East could potentially shake the world markets? Our narrative begins with an exploration into the origins of the Hamas-Israel conflict, a tangle of historical events that have shaped the current situation. The genesis of this conflict can be traced back to the early 20th century, when the Zionist movement aimed at establishing a Jewish homeland in Palestine. The culmination of this movement was the creation of the modern State of Israel in 1948, an event that displaced hundreds of thousands of Palestinians, setting the stage for decades of strife. This displacement led to the formation of various Palestinian factions, each with unique ideologies and methods. Among these factions, Hamas emerged in the late 1980s during the First Intifada, a Palestinian uprising against Israeli occupation. Hamas differentiated itself from other factions with its unwavering commitment to armed resistance and its refusal to recognize the State of Israel. Throughout the years, the conflict has been marked by periods of relative calm, punctuated by violent escalations. Each flare-up brings with it a ripple effect that extends far beyond the borders of Israel and Palestine. For instance, rising tensions often lead to spikes in oil prices, as we've seen recently in 2023, when oil prices shot up 3% due to investor concerns about a wider conflict. The Hamas-Israel conflict is not just a localized issue. It's a complex web that connects various geopolitical, religious, and economic threads. Major global players like the United States, Russia, and various Middle Eastern countries all have stakes in the conflict, making it a global concern. The conflict's impact extends to international relations, global security, and yes, even the world economy. Understanding the roots of this conflict provides us with a foundation to comprehend its potential global economic impact. The ripples of the Hamas-Israel conflict reach far beyond the Middle Eastern region. To understand this, we need to take a look at the economic implications that are felt on a global scale. First off, oil prices. With the surprise attack by Hamas on Israel, investors worldwide are left in a state of worry, leading to a sharp increase in oil prices. Brent crude, for instance, rose 3% to nearly $87 a barrel, while West Texas Intermediate also saw a similar rise, reaching just over $85 a barrel. Why does this matter to us? Well, oil is the lifeblood of many industries and economies, and any substantial rise in its price can send shockwaves through global markets. Next, let's talk about stock markets. The conflict has caused significant fluctuations, particularly in the US and Israel. As oil prices rose, US stock futures fell, with the S&P 500 down 0.6% and the Nasdaq 100 down 0.7%. Fears of higher oil prices leading to increased inflation and potential interest rate hikes by the Federal Reserve have made investors skittish. Meanwhile, Israel's stock market index, TA35, experienced its largest loss in over 3 years, dropping 6.5%. And how about potential supply disruptions? With major oil producers like Iran and Saudi Arabia potentially becoming involved in the conflict, concerns about disruptions to oil supply are on the rise. These concerns aren't unfounded. Any disruption in the supply chain can lead to a further rise in oil prices, impacting everything from transportation costs to the price of goods and services. But it's not just Wall Street and major corporations that feel these effects. For the everyday consumer, these economic changes can mean higher prices at the gas pump, increased costs for goods and services, and potentially, a higher cost of living. The economic reverberations of this conflict are felt worldwide, affecting everyone from Wall Street traders to everyday consumers. The recent escalation in violence has brought the Hamas-Israel conflict back into the limelight. Just a few days back, the world woke up to the news of a surprise attack by Hamas on Israel, an event that sent shockwaves through global markets. The immediate aftermath was palpable. As investors grappled with the potential for a wider conflict, oil prices took a significant leap. Brent crude saw an increase of 3%, climbing to nearly $87 a barrel, while West Texas Intermediate mirrored this rise, tipping over to $85 a barrel. The reason? Concerns about potential supply disruptions. Major producers like Iran and Saudi Arabia, if pulled into the conflict, could significantly hinder the steady flow of oil. This ripple effect is a stark reminder of how interconnected our world is, how a spark in one region can ignite a fire in another, and the impact wasn't just limited to oil. US stock futures took a hit as well, with the S&P 500 down by 0.6% and the Nasdaq 100 down by 0.7%. Investors, it seems, are bracing for the knock-on effects of higher oil prices. such as increased inflation and possible interest rate hikes by the Federal Reserve. The financial shockwaves reached Israel as well. The country's stock market index, TA35, experienced its largest loss in over 3 years, plunging by 6.5%, a stark indicator of the economic toll that such conflicts can inflict. In a world where economies are intricately linked, an escalation like this isn't just a regional problem, it's a global concern. The rise and fall of stocks, the surge in oil prices, the potential for increased inflation, these are all dominoes in a chain, each one capable of setting off the next. And that's the crux of the matter. The recent escalation isn't just about the immediate impact, it's about the potential for a wider conflict, the uncertainty it breeds, the fears it stokes. And as we've seen, these fears can and do translate into tangible economic shifts. These recent events underscore the volatility of the situation and its potential to destabilize world markets. The human cost of the conflict is immense and cannot be overlooked. This is not just a battle of economies, military might, or geopolitics. It's a human tragedy, playing out in real time, leaving scars that will last generations. When violence erupts, the immediate impact is felt on the health infrastructure. In the recent conflict, thousands of Palestinian injuries risked overwhelming health facilities. The World Health Organization reported over 8,500 injuries and more than 250 fatalities. This sudden influx of patients puts a tremendous strain on healthcare systems, already stretched thin by the ongoing global pandemic. This brings us to another critical aspect of the humanitarian crisis, the surge in COVID-19 cases. Amidst the chaos and devastation, social distancing and other preventative measures are all but forgotten. This, coupled with the damage to 30 health facilities, has created a perfect storm for a public health crisis within a crisis. But the repercussions of this humanitarian disaster extend far beyond the immediate needs of medical care. The destruction of residential buildings and schools not only leaves thousands homeless but also disrupts education and hampers long-term economic growth. It's a vicious cycle. The conflict creates a humanitarian crisis, which in turn deepens economic hardship, further fueling tensions and instability. Moreover, recovery from such devastation is not a matter of days or months, it takes years. Aid officials warn that it will take Gaza years to recover from the latest conflict. This prolonged recovery period translates into a longer-term economic burden, not just for the region, but potentially for the world economy. So while we discuss the economic implications of the conflict, we must not lose sight of the human tragedy unfolding on the ground. The humanitarian crisis is not a side effect of the conflict, it's an integral part of it. It shapes the economic landscape, influences political decisions, and leaves a lasting impact on society. The humanitarian crisis further complicates the situation, adding another layer of uncertainty to the economic outlook. This is not just a battle of numbers, but a battle for human dignity and survival. What lies ahead in the Hamas-Israel conflict, and how might it shape the future of the world economy? That's the million-dollar question. The future, as we know, is inherently uncertain, and this conflict is no different. It's a complex chess game with multiple players, each with their own strategies and endgames. Let's consider a few potential scenarios. If the conflict continues to escalate, we could see further spikes in oil prices. As we've already witnessed, unrest in the Middle East tends to unsettle oil markets due to concerns about potential supply disruptions. Higher oil prices could stoke inflation fears and potentially lead to interest rate hikes, disrupting not only local but also global economies. Now imagine a scenario where the conflict de-escalates. This could stabilize oil prices and markets might breathe a sigh of relief. However, the scars of the conflict would linger. The costs of reconstruction, the toll on human lives, and the mental trauma inflicted on the people affected cannot be easily quantified or rectified. Then there's the wildcard scenario where the conflict takes an unexpected turn. This could be anything from a sudden, surprising peace deal to a wider war involving other nations. Such a scenario could have unpredictable and far-reaching effects on world markets. Regardless of the scenario, one thing is clear: the uncertainty of the situation contributes to economic instability. Markets, as we know, dislike uncertainty. It makes planning and investment more risky and can lead to volatility. This uncertainty extends beyond just the Middle East. The world economy is highly interconnected, and a shock in one part of the world can reverberate across the globe. As the conflict continues to evolve, so too will its potential impact on world markets. The only certainty is uncertainty itself. The Hamas-Israel conflict is more than a regional issue. It's a global one, with potential repercussions that could shape the future of the world economy.